This is Carolina Business Review. Major support provided by High Point University, the premier life skills university focused on preparing students for the world as it is going to be. Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and services with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Summers and vacations in the Carolinas always provide a much-needed respite from the worries of business and, of course, the daily grind. But there is still this persistent unease, things like real estate prices and values, angst about public and private debt, and we may be overthinking, and I hate to say this, but we may be overthinking the impacts of tariffs even. Welcome again, and thank you for supporting the most widely watched and the longest-running dialogue on Carolina business, policy, and public affairs. I'm Chris William. In a moment, we start this week's dialogue about things that matter most right here in the Carolinas, and later on, a dialogue about the implications about a big economic development win for the state of South Carolina. Scout Motors President and CEO Scott Keogh joins us. Stay with us. We start right now.
Major funding also by Foundation for the Carolinas, a catalyst for philanthropy and driver of civic engagement, helping individuals, nonprofits, and companies bring their charitable visions to life. Truliant Federal Credit Union, proudly serving the Carolinas since 1952 by focusing on what truly matters, our members' financial success. Welcome to Brighter Banking. And Martin Marietta, a leading provider of natural resource-based building materials, providing the foundation on which our communities improve and grow. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, David C. Lockwood III of Colliers, South Carolina, Tony Mecia from the Charlotte Ledger, and special guest, Scott Keogh, President and CEO of Scout Motors.
Hello, welcome to our program. Thank you for joining us. Gentlemen, welcome back. Tony, nice to see you. David, it's been 2 years, I think, since you hauled it up here from Columbia, but we're glad to have you back on the program.
Very good to be here.
So you were president of SIOR.
SIOR.
Thank you. Jeez, I always get that wrong. It's like CCIM. I can't get my acronyms right. But my point is, you traveled internationally around commercial real estate.
Yes.
And when you came back to the Carolinas, when you came back to South Carolina, what point of view did you have after seeing the global commercial real estate market?
So the view was always prior to that the world evolved just like it did in the Carolinas. And that's not true. When you travel around, particularly the United States, you realize that we're in a sweet spot. We've got really good things going on in the Carolinas. And when you're in certain segments of the Midwest, and when you're in Chicago, when you're on the West Coast, those markets are drastically different than the Carolinas. And so what we have right now, we need to treasure. It's a great real estate market, a great commercial real estate market. But that's not happening across the country, and there's still concerns in some of the major markets. New York is starting to do very well from a repopulation of office and from a retail standpoint, but there's some softness really in the Chicago market, Midwest market, and huge overbuilding in the Texas market.
Yeah, okay, well, let's shift a little bit, Tony. In the center of the Carolinas, the biggest city and the biggest region is the Charlotte market, obviously. And as David just described it, Charlotte's been the beneficiary of a lot of this momentum. But there's also uncertainty. There's also an insecurity about growth, and these are the good old days. But given the point that you see, what are the challenges for growth and development in all things?
Yeah, I just think, there are a few headwinds, obviously, that are facing, the country, facing the world right now. The Carolinas are not immune from those. Yeah. I think to David's point, one thing I hear a lot is around Charlotte is where else would you rather be? I mean, that we're in a good position. We're in a growing area, North and South Carolina. But there's certainly a lot of questions, I think, about interest rates. I mean, we're seeing some of the momentum that we've traditionally seen in the Carolinas as far as building and new projects. A lot of that has slowed. I mean, it's slowing everywhere, but it still seems like it's a pretty good place to be.
Relatively slowed, right? As David said, and I don't want to say how great the region is, but it does have its issues. David, back to you. There's, folks concerned about tariffs, folks concerned about a downgrade of U.S. debt by Moody's. It was the last of three major rating agencies that downgraded the U.S. debt. But, and not to diminish that or sideline that, but this is more of a story of uncertainty, isn't it?
It really is. It's like being in a track meet and the gun goes off and there's a false start. We've had false starts for the last 6 to 9 months. We want to get things going. We want to see interest rates lowered. We want to see the debt markets open up. But we keep having things that prevent us from moving forward. Tariffs are the most recent. It was pencils down for all the industrial markets until they could really figure out what are the tariffs going to do to the industrial markets in the U.S.
What does a big town like Charlotte look like when you talk about Class A space, when you talk about a vibrant uptown? Is it still vibrant, or is it now spreading out to the ring communities?
Well, I think there is still a vibrancy, certainly. To Charlotte, you do have, you mentioned the office. There is still pretty high office vacancies.
What would that whisper
25%, rate? It's around, in the low 20s. And it's stayed there, too. And we haven't seen a lot of new construction of office. Now, the last few weeks, there have been a few nibbles, a few new tenants taking some of these new office towers, which I think that people in commercial real estate find very encouraging. So, the worry is that in maybe a couple years, if we're not building right now, what's that going to look like if we keep growing?
Last question, about 60 seconds, David. Are the traditional sources of money, big banks, and also the non-bank lenders that look at large commercial real estate products, has it slowed?
It has slowed.
Dramatically?
But there's a lot of private wealth out there that wants to put money into real estate, and they really look at it as how much can we accumulate?
Family
offices, significant amount of money. They'll come back in the future and may place debt on investments as the debt structure is opened up and as those interest rates come down. But there's a lot of cash out there chasing really good real estate projects right now.
Okay, all right, guys, stay with us. We're going to meet our guest in just a moment. Also, coming up on this program, she is the mayor of the largest city in the Carolinas. Vi Lyles will join us again on this program. And then also coming up as well is Tom Barkin, president of the Richmond Federal Reserve Bank. Tom has been on this program before. He knows a little something about finance and about policy and about growth. Tom Barkin from Richmond Fed will also be a guest on this program coming up. They are more than just another entry in the latest shiny thing in the EV market. Scout, remember that? Or whether it was rather, it used to be known as International Scout back in the 60s and 70s, was a real pioneer in that boxy-looking, simple off-road farm truck coolness, rugged vehicle that was developed over 50 years ago. The question is, will that legacy brand, combined with the contemporary innovation and technology, be enough to crack and, in fact, win in that EV market? Joining us now is Scout Motors President and Chief Executive Officer, Scott Keogh. Scott, how often does Scout and Scott get transposed?
More and more frequently, seems to be the case. But I'll have to change my name because we're not changing Scout's name, that's for sure.
Well, welcome to the Carolinas. I know
Thank you.
I'm a couple of years late, but good to have you and your gang down here because it's quite a splash. But going back to the beginning, whenever you talk about Scout Motors, people they look at you for a second and then they say, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So what was that aha moment? When did the light go off in your head or the team or the brain trust to say, we could resurrect this, we could leverage this up?
Yeah, like a lot of things in life, a lot of different pieces came together simultaneously. I think where it sort of started is the Volkswagen Group, as you know, is 670,000 employees, a gigantic global corporation. They basically have 22 points of market share in China, 20 points of market share in Europe, and they looked to America with their brands and they said, we have 5-6 points of market share. How could we do better? America's a huge market, it's a huge profit pool. How can we do it? And we looked at different ideas, and America is relatively simple when you look at the market. About 50% of the profit pools, total profits in the automotive business, sits in two segments. It sits in these SUVs, the more rugged, robust ones, and it sits in the pickup trucks. So that's hovering out there. And then at the same time, I think without a doubt, you're seeing it more and more every day. There's this powerful American moment right now, which is let's build things again, let's do things again, let's make it happen here again, this rise of the greatness of American possibility. At the same time, there was an acquisition. So the Volkswagen Group acquired a truck company called Navistar. Navistar, of course, is a holding company that makes heavy trucks. They had the International brand. They have school buses, heavy trucks under there. Below that, on probably page 50 of the contract, let's say, was, of course, the rights to the iconic Scout brand. So then we said to ourselves, a light bulb went off that said, if we go after these powerful American profit pools, if we went after it with a clean slate opportunity, complete clean slate business case of how we look at it, and then, of course, at the same time, restore an American icon for this American moment. And so you put those three things together, and that's how it came about. And when I look at the Scout brand, I think you summed it up exactly right. It basically is the godfather. It sort of invented the SUV segment. At the time, the SUV segment was probably 1% of the U.S. market. Now it's 70% of the U.S. market. And I think you're right. It's iconic, it's farm, it's heritage, it's go anywhere, it's do anything. And the reason you know it is the name itself. If you take the Scout brand, almost every SUV, frankly, ripped off its name. Blazer, Trailblazer, Forerunner, Pathfinder, Discovery, they're all iterations of the original. And the other reason we knew is the instant we hit this idea and we started brainstorming around, it always put a twinkle in someone's eye. And then it went from 1 to 2 to 5, and now it's to millions. So that's how it came about, and that's why we're here.
So you say, I like the way you said that, uniquely American moment. Are you not afraid of the birthing pains of the same moment, like tariffs for one? Does that not scare you?
Look, I've been in the automotive business for 30 years, and everything can sort of scare you in the automotive business, right? It's in the middle of almost everything happening in the economy, from real estate to labor to technology to federal ambitions to tariffs to policy. You're right in the middle of it, and it's shifting all the time. Specifically to tariffs, let's make no mistake. Tariffs, if you look at them, the automotive business is built sort of on the central nervous system that we have, and then you're potentially putting some big changes into that, and of course that's going to cause anxiety, it's going to cause apprehension, it's going to cause a little bit of upheaval. There's no two ways about it. I think if you flip specifically to Scout, we're in a good situation. First and foremost, obviously, we'll talk about the factory, but we make cars here. Mm-hmm. I think without a doubt, we always intended to have our supply chain as close to the plant as possible. As I look at it right now, we'll probably put 50% of our parts within 200 miles. That's a great opportunity for the Carolinas. And then, of course, we're making decisions on an almost daily basis. Okay, where does this part come from? What's the math to localize it? What's the math and how do we navigate this? And of course, it is changing, if we're honest with ourselves. Sometimes USMCA is included, sometimes it's not. So it's a little bit of a hazy picture to navigate. What I like about our position is our fundamental truth, if you will, was to be as Americanized as possible, which is what we're doing. And then we'll make the calls as we learn more, as we get smarter, and we're going to look at cost. And also, you're going to have to look at labor as well. To insource all of these things and ramp up all of these plants, labor is certainly an issue that needs to be looked at in the Carolinas and America.
Yeah, okay. David?
So, first of all, Scott, thank you for what Scout is doing in central South Carolina, Richland County, the city of Columbia, the whole region. It popped with that announcement, and it has not let up. So thank you very much for the investment that you're making.
I hear all the bad news that comes, so it's good to hear some of the good news that's coming.
And you've got a really successful career of making things successful, and I applaud that. So we know that there are, and I love what you say about the suppliers, 200-mile radius. That is great. We know that there's a headquarters operation, that it's in play, looking at the U.S., looking at multiple markets. But what can you say about the Carolinas and how we are positioned, maybe from a competitive standpoint, to win that? And what can you tell us about where that process is right now?
First, I don't know how you learned all that, but I guess word's getting around. I think the first thing on the Carolinas, frankly, we do love it here. I'm not from here. Most of my team is not from here, and we've come to welcome it. As you can imagine, we've got a lot of executives that moved into Columbia. They've never set foot in the South. Some of them haven't set foot in America, and they couldn't be happier. So we feel very welcomed, and that's a great thing. I think if I refer specifically to the plant, and then I will get to the headquarters, I think the plant had a lot of advantages. We looked at nearly 74 markets before landing on that location. So we know well the real estate in America, the realities of America. And as you know, there's one thing to say we have a piece of land. There's another thing to say that we can build a factory on that land. So the bigger thing, without a doubt, is the workforce. We feel very confident we can hire, train, motivate build a successful operation for the 4,000 jobs that we have there. The second thing that the Carolinas had was the infrastructure, and the infrastructure on water, on power, on rail, and building that, which was huge. The third thing, which I think was great, is the government was ready to do business and do business quickly, from Secretary Lightsey to the governor, and that has been a fantastic. You put that together, really no state could really compare, and we know well state by state. And you'd walk into some states and say, here's a piece of land, but there's no power. And this is not like a light switch you flick on and you power up a plant, so it's fantastic. With regard to the headquarters, this is going to be a difficult challenge, I think, if you look at it. If you look at the automotive industry in general, it's been anchored from the headquarters and the engineering and the design and the development in the Midwest. It's moved a little bit to California with the emergence of software and all of that. We think there's an opportunity to do exactly this in the South. And by that, I mean, get the engineering talent for software, get the engineering talent for safety, get the engineering talent for crash, get the engineering talent for everything that goes in designing and engineering a vehicle. So the first thing we need is fantastic talent, particularly engineering talent. The second thing we need is a great place to live, and that's a big spectrum. Can our employees afford it? Do they get good health care? Do they want to move here? Because of course we're going to have to convince an awful lot of people to say this is going to be a great place to raise your family and build a home and all of that. And the third thing, let's be honest, is the math has to work, right? We're bringing a lot. We're bringing upwards of 1,000 high-paying jobs, which is roughly what we're looking at when all scouts get fully ramped up at the headquarters. And this is a big opportunity. I think it's an iconic opportunity due to the brand. I think it's a financial opportunity due to the 1,000 jobs. But the biggest, let's say, collective effort wherever we go is going to be the galvanization of talent, because much of this talent does not exist. We're going to have to put it there. So apologies for going on long.
No. Let me do a quick follow-up, Tony. I'm going to give you a chance. So when we think about the big brands that have relocated to the South, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, BMW in South Carolina, very successfully, and they seem to be foreign manufacturers and not the big ones from Detroit. You have a big innovation gang up in Detroit. Is that going to be hard to make a decision between, as you called, the traditional Midwest and the New South, if it is the New South?
Look, many of those places you named, rightly or wrongly, are manufacturing centers. And a manufacturing center is a different thing than ground up innovation, designing, building the car, early concept, early phase, and everything else.
What would keep you?
The goal would be, of course, and that's exactly what I was referencing, the goal would be to put that in as close as possible to one place and get the team and governance. It's all going to depend on if we can get the talent, full stop, without a doubt. Which is why geography is important. We already know where our factory is. Closer to the factory, I think, is better for a whole host of reasons, if we can check all those boxes, if.
Okay, Tony, go ahead, I'm sorry.
It seems like, I mean, you're making a pretty good sized bet on EVs. It seems like a lot of the big auto manufacturers, maybe their projections were overly optimistic, but you've seen some pullback there, and maybe the growth isn't what was initially envisioned. What does that do to your plans, and how are you thinking about the growth of EVs?
Look, first of all, you're 100% right on the, let's say, the uneasiness in the EV market. I think a couple of things, then I will directly answer the question. I think the first thing at the highest level, it's essential to have government policy match industrial policy match consumer demand. And you'd really like to draw a straight line wherever possible on these fronts. To the extent that these things are schizophrenic, if you will, not ideal. So when we make an investment in Blythewood, this is not a coffee shop in downtown somewhere. We have plants that have been around for 70, 80, 90 years. This is a generational investment, which means we need more stability. And so let's hope as we navigate some of the bumps around, we can get that stability. The second thing I think is critical is I think America should never be in a position to say we're going backwards and backwards is going to be great. I think if you look at these core technologies, frankly, most of them were invented here in America. Battery technology, semiconductors, all of the software that's navigating these cars. So we have the strength, we have the power, we have the assets to go do these things without a doubt. The third thing, to directly answer your question, I think we're extremely smart at Scout. When you're a startup in this phase, you have to listen to the market. And I think the biggest thing we did to listen to the market is add the range extender to the Scout thing. So what you in essence have, in my mind, and I think we're going to nail this, the Scout didn't change. It's got the ground clearance, it's got the capabilities, it's got all the Scoutness. It's got the things people do love about EVs, which is the torque, the silence, the package, the software, the updates, all those cool things. except it takes away what I call the drama. You can go to a gas station to keep this thing moving as opposed to, okay, is the charging station operating? Is it working on it? So I think we've got slick, cool technology. The other reason I like it is we're able to do both of them at the plant. So let's say the plant goes 100% in one or 100% the other, or 50-50 or 70-30. We can make that happen with our planning. So I think we're in a good position, but make no debate, you've had about 70 years of, I would say, stability in the automotive business about what's going to move the vehicle. And now it's been turbulent, to use a lack of a term, but I do believe technology will win. Technology always wins. The American consumer always chooses the best technology at the best price. Over time, batteries are going to get better, batteries are going to get smaller, batteries are going to get cheaper, but we've got a slick, I would call range extender hybrid that's going to give America what it wants. Good price, good technology.
If I could just follow up on that, Chris.
Please, go ahead.
You mentioned technology several times. What are some of the technologies specifically that you're most excited about that can set you apart?
Oh, I think that one. That's the one right there, without a doubt. I think the second one is the software of the vehicle and the ability to do over-the-air updates in your driveway to update certain aspects and features of the car. The other thing I'm excited about is the fact that we sort of blended, I would say, old tech and new tech. I think what a lot of people say when they see a lot of the startups and see electric vehicles is they say sort of, dude, where's my truck? Or dude, where's my car? It's sort of like, I didn't even know how to open the thing. And then when I finally get in it, it's a giant screen that everything is 5 layers down into software. And then AI is going to take over. I think we wanted to keep some of the simplicity and robustness of the Scout, yet sort of behind the curtain introduce the cool technology. And a good one is, I think, the solid rear axle. We have an integrated e-motor into the rear axle, so you have all the rugged, the durability, the capability, yet the power that's going to come from that e-motor integrated into the rear axle. We've done that. Well, we'll get more into that when we can start to talk about suppliers. But that's a cool piece of tech, and we've done that sort of all over the place.
Speaking of suppliers, Sean Suggs is the president of Toyota Battery Manufacturing, and they're up in the Triad of North Carolina. And Sean sat right where you were, and he said, we learned something. We're not just going to do EV batteries, we're going to do hybrid. We're tooling to do hybrid. You seem to have answered that with this backup onboard generator. Scott, could you pivot just as quickly to do an internal combustion engine in that Scout if someone wanted that?
Theoretically, you could. You can do anything. Our engineers are capable, and you can package anything through the thing. I wouldn't go that route. I think the future is either going to be some combination of, let's say, hybrid, which is dual, or some combination over time of full EV. Sitting in the full only ICE world, fine place for some people, not the right space for us. And if I look at the market, I think that's where the puck is heading, and I think the goal of companies and the goal of innovation is to go where the puck is going. Mm-hmm. And so that's the world we're going to take, and I think that's going to certainly enough of the market, because the most important thing to me, yes, the technology is important. Can you get the capabilities and the price point? Because that's what's going to drive the customer decision.
How are your pre-sales, by the way?
Pre-sales are awesome.
Awesome. Reservation? Number, is that
no, not giving you a number. Because I think you get into a fool's game in terms of, and you've seen it where people say, we got 2 million reservations and then no sales transact. So I think that's a fool's game. What I do know is when we showed the vehicle on October 24th of last year, the response was through the roof. And it's exactly what America was looking for, to say, you're going to bring back an icon. You still kept the credibility and the coolness, but it's got innovation. I'm all in. And I know it's all in because everywhere you turn, there's excitement. So no, the reservation has been good. I would say it's one of the best responded vehicles in the history of the Volkswagen Group in America. So the reaction's huge. And we've cliniced the car, obviously, but clinic doesn't matter. The best thing is to show it and see the reaction. And that's why we put the reservation thing up, because that's the best place to get a reaction. Bang, $100, and away you go.
We have about a minute left, and I do want to get this
I just got here.
I know. Right. Well, please come back.
Okay. All right.
So in about a minute, Congress reversed the California mandate about the EV manufacturing in 2030. Do those kind of changes in policy scare you, or you think, they're coming, we're gonna roll with it, or does that kind of mandate reversal, could that be a red flag?
Look, there's a lot of ways of looking at it. I think let's be optimistic. Optimistic, of course, is to have one standard across the country. I think a lot of people can get behind. To make that consistent and make that relatively stable on that front is a good thing. The thing that's not so positive is to have a constant whipsaw. And the whipsaw being, in 5 years, you better be here, versus in 5 years, you better be here. That's a hard thing to be matching. I think the other thing it does is it sends a mixed message to the consumer marketplace, which is why the critical alignment to me, government policy, industrial investment, consumer alignment. And you got to get those right.
That's got to be the last word on that. Please come back. And I'm not kidding. I almost called you Scout, but please come back, Scott. We'd love to hear more about this.
I'll change my name.
Yeah. Thank you. Good to see you. Welcome again.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks, gentlemen.
Tony, nice to see you, as always. David, good to have you back. Welcome back to the Carolinas.
Appreciate it.
Until next week, I'm Chris William. We certainly hope that your summer's off to a great start. Until next week, good night.
Gratefully acknowledging support by Martin Marietta, Truliant Federal Credit Union, Foundation for the Carolinas, Sunoco, Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, High Point University, and by viewers like you. Thank you.